Hello and welcome back to Real Estate Stories with Ben Slater, your full-time, all the time, lifetime realtor. How you doing today, Ben?
Hey Pete, terrific. Great to see you and great to be back.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to talk about a little bit about the changing market and how it relates to buyers' home inspections. I actually, I shouldn't be so happy about it, but I had buyers back out of my latest transaction. We completed a home inspection and we actually didn't even finish the inspection. Halfway through it, they were out. So that got me to thinking a little bit about home inspections and how to educate people on what they are, what to expect, how the leverage points works, and so on.
Okay, great. Let's get started.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my last blog, we're actually finally out of this crazy hyper sellers market. And in the city, in Philly, and a lot of cities around the nation, we're actually starting to get into a pretty strong buyer's market, which is terrific. And it's finally spreading to the suburbs a little bit. So, as I mentioned in the blog, with the extreme sellers market that we've been in, home inspections almost weren't an option because there was six, seven, eight offers, and the buyers that really wanted it were going to waive the home inspection, and that's obviously the offer that the sellers would take. Now that there's a little more supply on the market, a lot more supply and less demand, you actually have an opportunity to do a traditional home purchase where the buyer gets a home inspection, which as realtors we always recommend that you get a home inspection.
Absolutely.
Um, for various reasons. The most obvious, I mean, you're buying a 200, 300, half a million, $1 million purchase. You want to make sure you're buying something that's not falling apart, and you want to know what you're buying. So, the standard default position, as any buyer's agent will tell you, is you should get your home inspected. Now, like I said, there's circumstances in extreme sellers markets where, we can recommend you get it inspected, but we know if there's eight offers, the winning offer is going to take that risk. And it's really just about knowing the risk and what it is. So, and every situation is different. Like, obviously, if it's a beautiful home that's been lived in for the last 12 years and they have documentation of a new roof and the heating system's great, and my buyers have a family member who's a contractor and they went through, you feel a little better about taking a gamble as far as waiving the home inspection. But in any case, for today, I want to talk about actually when you do conduct the home inspections, why you conduct them, and what it entails and what to expect.
Okay, cool. So let's go. Let's get into it.
So, a home inspection is a contingency, which, like a mortgage contingency, what that means is the buyer will buy the house, but it's contingent upon the results of this home inspection. So, as a seller, you're really at a disadvantage. And that's why, the two scariest words for sellers are appraisal and home inspection, because they know once the buyer gets under contract in the agreement of sale in Pennsylvania, the seller can't terminate. As long as the buyer is doing what they're supposed to do, the seller is pretty much obligated to sell that house. So as soon as you sign as a seller and the buyer has that home inspection, you're at risk for that buyer backing out. And if that buyer does back out, then you have to re-go on the market. And worst case scenario for the seller, if the buyer finds a whole bunch of things wrong with it during the home inspection, they're going to present that report to you, and the seller has to disclose that. So it's really a risk for a seller, which goes back to my point earlier. In a hyper seller's market, that's why sellers will always take an offer without the home inspection, because it totally reduces their risk.
Do you feel like sellers sometimes proactively get their own inspections so they know what's wrong so they can fix it so
Exactly. Yeah,
it'll be a better property?
That's a great point. We can do a whole other video on that too. But yeah, as a listing agent from the listing side, I always recommend, great idea to get a home inspection prior to listing. You can see everything. I mean, it's like anything else. Home sales is one of the only products where you sell something and the buyer doesn't really know everything about it, I mean, usually, like, if you go to buy, any other piece of merchandise, you can kind of see how it is and you know what you're getting. With sellers and home sellers, if you don't have a home inspection, buyers, they're not experts on home inspections. They can see the cosmetic stuff, but they don't know what's behind the walls and what's in the heating systems and the roof. So it makes a strong listing presentation when you have that home inspection report, especially if it's a good one, or there were items on it and you say as a seller, hey, this came up and we took care of this, here's the receipt, we took care of this, so the buyer knows exactly what they're buying. So yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Awesome.
But getting back to the buyer's home inspection, it's an opportunity to say the offer is contingent upon this. You pay a home inspector anywhere from $500 to $800, depending on how big the house is. And, they're going to go through every system and every nook and cranny and come up with a really detailed report on everything that's, deficient about the house, or anything that's a possible risk, or anything that needs attention to be fixed.
And in most cases, is it the buyer or the seller who's paying for the home inspection? And if it's the seller and they don't want to do one, can the buyer pay for their own, or does that happen?
The buyer always pays for the home inspection, unless
Okay.
the seller already got a pre-listing one, in which case they can provide that. But it's up to the buyer, and that's the risk as a buyer. Like, you might spend $700 for the home inspection and then find out the house is not great and you back out. You'll get your deposit money back that you put down towards the house, but you will not get, your home inspection is what it is. The company's not going to give you the money back. So, it's a little bit of a risk for a buyer, and as buyers, you have to be prepared for that. But it's much better to, blow $700 on an inspection than buy a $300,000 house that, in the case of my buyers just now, it was a renovation, a quote, rehab, flip, whatever you want to call it. And, the heating system was put in improperly, rusted and corroded. There was debris on the roof. They never redid the roof. The main issue was a shower that they had installed in the basement was installed incorrectly, so it was leaking all the way through. And my buyers had issues with mold in a previous house before I met them, obviously. But that once they saw that water there, they were out. So,
But it's better than you paid that $700 now, but you're not paying thousands of dollars in repairs after you purchase the house because you didn't know the stuff was wrong.
And what not everybody realizes until they get into the actual transaction, and it's our job as realtors to explain to them, both as buyers and sellers beforehand. But with the contingency, you have a period of time. The default is 10 days. Sometimes I'll shorten that up because it's a little more advantageous to the sellers, and it kind of conveys, hey, we're really serious, we're going to get a move on this, and we're going to not have you hanging out for 10 days, wondering if we're going to continue to buy it. But anyway, the default's 10 days. You can make it 5, 7 days. And during that time, you get your home inspection. When the results come back, the buyer has basically 3 choices. You can A, say everything's perfect, we're going to go on, take the house as is. B, like my last sellers just did, we can say, hey, this place is a lemon, we're out, we're canceling, nothing's going to change our mind. Or the third situation, which more than often happens, is you enter a renegotiation period. Hey, we still like the house. We didn't realize that the roof was falling apart. We're going to need to fix that. It's unanticipated. We're going to request for a $7,000 credit, And then the seller can either say yes, no, or you can negotiate in between. So that's where the negotiations come in.
Gotcha. All right, well, anything you would like to say to wrap up for today?
Other than that, I just would love to say that I'm super excited for the market to finally be turning into more of a buyer's market. I mean, a lot of agents and people in the business are in sales, so they want to hype it up and say, hey, everything's great. And it's a business cycle like anything else. I think it's actually healthy. Prices are stabilizing in the suburbs, even coming down a little bit. It's more of an even back and forth market as far as supply and demand. So buyers have an opportunity to shop around and get a home inspection, which is terrific news. So that pretty much wraps it up for today.
Okay, well, how people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about their home and their home purchase?
Well, full-time, all the time, lifetime, Pete, I live it. So they can call, text, or email anytime. Obviously, click on this link and message me, which would be great. The website, benslater.remax.com, and social media. And 610-348-0446 is the cell, and that is the cell that you will get a hold of me right away.
Very good. All right, till the next time, this has been Real Estate Stories with Ben Slater.
Appreciate it.